Here's where it gets really interesting though. The reason $5,000 feels impossible isn't actually about your ability to save. It's about identity. And I know that sounds like some pseudo-psychological nonsense, but bear with me for a second because this is huge. Somewhere along the way, you decided, or maybe someone decided for you, that you're not good with money. Maybe it was a parent who said it offhand when you were 12. Maybe it was a bad financial decision you made in your 20s that you're still carrying around like a scarlet letter. Maybe it's just this vague, undefined feeling that financial success is for other people. People who are smarter, or more disciplined, or who had better opportunities. Not you. And once that identity sets in, it colors everything. Every financial decision you make gets filtered through this lens of, I'm bad with money. Which means you're constantly looking for evidence to confirm it. You spend $80 on something dumb and you think, see? I'm terrible at this. You forget to pay a bill on time and you think, yep, that's me. Total disaster. But when you do make a good financial decision, when you pack lunch instead of buying it, when you skip that unnecessary purchase, when you transfer $20 into savings, you don't count it. You don't let it update your identity. Because your brain is looking for confirmation, not contradiction. It wants to be right about you being bad with money, even if being right keeps you stuck. This is called confirmation bias, by the way, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. We don't see the world as it is. We see it as we expect it to be. And if you expect yourself to fail at saving $5,000, your brain will find a million tiny ways to make that expectation come true. You'll unconsciously sabotage yourself. You'll find reasons why you had to spend that money. You'll convince yourself that saving is impossible right now, that you'll start next month, next year, when things are less chaotic. Except things are always chaotic. That's just life. Let's start with the obvious question, why 5,000? Why does that specific number carry so much weight? Because honestly, it's kind of arbitrary, right? For some people, it's 10,000 or 20,000. For others, it might be 2,000. But there's something about $5,000 specifically that seems to sit in this psychological sweet spot where it's just big enough to feel overwhelming but just small enough that you feel like you should be able to do it, which makes the whole thing even more frustrating. It's like, it's within sight, but you can't reach it, and that gap between where you are and where you want to be feels wider than the Grand Canyon. Part of the problem is that we're terrible at visualizing money in abstract terms. Like, genuinely awful at it. When you see 5,000 on a screen or hear someone say it out loud, your brain doesn't immediately translate that into something tangible. It's just a number floating in space. But if I told you to save 5,000 individual dollar bills and physically stack them in your living room, suddenly it feels different, right? More real. More achievable. Because you can picture it. You can imagine putting $1 on the pile, then another, then another. But when it's just a number in your bank account, or worse, a number that's not in your bank account, it stays abstract, and abstract things feel impossible. And then there's the way we think about time, which is maybe even worse. Because when you think about saving $5,000, your brain doesn't break it down automatically. It doesn't think, okay, that's about $400 a month for a year. It just sees the lump sum and goes, nope. Can't do it. Moving on. It's like if someone asked you to write a novel and your brain immediately pictured sitting down and writing 80,000 words in one sitting. Of course that feels impossible. But if you wrote 500 words a day? Totally doable. You'd have a novel in 6 months. Same thing with money, except we never make that mental shift. We stay stuck in lump sum thinking, and lump sum thinking is a trap. Okay, here's another huge one. The way we think about spending versus saving is completely backwards. When you spend money, you get immediate gratification. You buy the thing, you feel good, end of story. But when you save money, the gratification is delayed. Way delayed. You put $50 in a savings account and you get nothing. Just a slightly bigger number in an app. Your brain doesn't register that as a reward. It registers it as a loss because you gave up the opportunity to buy something fun right now. This is why saving feels like punishment. Because in the short term, it kind of is. But here's the thing, your brain can be trained to find gratification in saving. Sounds impossible, I know, but it's true. You just have to reframe what saving actually is. Instead of thinking about it as giving up something now, think about it as buying something later. And I don't mean in a vague, abstract way. I mean literally. What is the $5,000 for? Because if it's just savings, or emergency fund, or some other generic label, your brain doesn't care. That's not exciting. That's not motivating. But if it's never having to stress about my car breaking down, or taking a trip to Japan without going into debt, or finally having enough cushion that I don't panic every time an unexpected bill shows up, suddenly it's real. It's tangible. You're not saving money. You're buying peace of mind. You're buying freedom. You're buying options. This isn't just semantics, by the way. This is how you trick your brain into wanting to save. Because right now, spending has a better story. Spending is fun, exciting, immediate. Saving is boring and distant and feels like homework. But if you give saving a better story, if you make it about something that genuinely matters to you, then suddenly the equation shifts. Suddenly you're not sacrificing. You're choosing. And choice feels completely different than deprivation. You know what's weird? You can scroll through your phone for 3 hours without thinking twice about it. But the idea of saving $5,000 feels like trying to climb Everest in flip-flops. Like genuinely impossible. Not just hard, impossible. And I'm not talking about people living paycheck to paycheck with genuine financial emergencies. I'm talking about people who, on paper, could probably do it. People who spend $60 on dinner without blinking, who have a closet full of clothes they forgot they bought, who somehow managed to find money for concerts and weekend trips and that new gadget they absolutely needed. But ask them to save $5,000? Their brain just shuts down. It becomes this abstract, mythical number that exists in the same realm as winning the lottery or becoming fluent in Mandarin, theoretically possible, but not for them. Not in this lifetime. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, human psychology, and why some people seem to glide through financial challenges while others are constantly stressed about their bank account balance. And honestly, this $5,000 thing has fascinated me for years because it's not really about the money. Like at all. It's about something way deeper and way more interesting. It's about how we perceive barriers, how our brains trick us into thinking certain things are out of reach, and how the stories we tell ourselves about money become these self-fulfilling prophecies that keep us stuck in the exact same place year after year. And here's the thing, once you understand why $5,000 feels impossible, you'll realize it's the same reason a lot of other things in your life feel impossible too. Your brain is running the same broken software for multiple problems, and you just haven't noticed it yet. So what I want to do today is walk you through why this happens, what's actually going on in your head when you look at that number and feel that wave of hopelessness, and more importantly, how to completely rewire the way you think about it. Because I promise you, by the end of this, $5,000 won't feel like Everest anymore. It'll feel like, I don't know, a decent-sized hill. Maybe a staircase. Something totally manageable that you've just been looking at from the wrong angle this whole time. Here's something nobody talks about, the guilt spiral. You know what I mean. You set a savings goal, you do great for 2 weeks, and then something happens. Maybe your friends invite you to an expensive dinner. Maybe your car needs an unexpected repair. Maybe you just have a bad day and decide to treat yourself to something you don't need. And instead of just moving on, you spiral. You think, well, I already messed up, so what's the point? And then you stop trying altogether. You abandon the goal. You go back to your old habits. And 6 months later, you're right back where you started, feeling like saving money is impossible because you already failed once. This is so incredibly common and so incredibly fixable, but it requires you to let go of this idea that saving money is a pass-fail test. It's not. It's not something you either succeed at perfectly or fail at completely. It's a practice. It's something you get better at over time, with lots of stumbles and adjustments along the way. If you miss a week, you didn't fail. You just missed a week. Start again. If you have to dip into your savings for an emergency, that's literally what it's for. You didn't fail. You used the thing you built. And then you build it again. The people who successfully save money aren't perfect. They're not superhuman. They just don't quit when things get messy. They don't let one bad decision turn into a month of bad decisions. They course correct. They forgive themselves. They keep going. Because the goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. And progress is messy and nonlinear and full of setbacks, but it's still progress. Let's talk about one more thing, because I think this might be the most important part. The math of $5,000 is actually way more forgiving than you think. Like, I know it feels massive. I know it feels like it would take forever. But let's actually break it down, because I think once you see the numbers, your brain might relax a little. If you saved $10 a day, literally just $10, you'd have $5,000 in less than 17 months. $10. That's a lunch. That's 2 coffees. That's skipping one impulse purchase on Amazon. That's it. Or if $10 a day feels like too much, what about $50 a week? Same thing. 17 months. You'd hit your goal before you even realized it. Or what if you got really aggressive and saved $100 a week? You'd be done in a year. 1 year. 12 months. That's nothing. And here's the part that really gets me. Most people spend more than that on stuff they don't even remember buying. I'm not exaggerating. If you look at your bank statement from 3 months ago, I guarantee there are transactions you have zero memory of. A subscription charge. A random purchase. Something that seemed important at the time but absolutely wasn't. And that's the money. That's the $5,000. It's not hiding in some impossible place. It's just leaking. Slowly. In 100 tiny directions. And all you have to do is redirect it. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's possible. And those are two very different things. Easy would mean it requires no effort, no thought, no discipline. Possible means it's within reach if you're willing to try. And the gap between where you are now and where you want to be isn't nearly as wide as it feels. It just requires you to stop thinking of $5,000 as this monolithic, terrifying thing and start thinking of it as a series of very small, very manageable decisions. Now let's talk about the second massive reason $5,000 feels impossible: visibility. Or rather, the lack of it. You know how when you're trying to lose weight, people always say you should track your food? And it's annoying and tedious and nobody wants to do it, but it works because it makes the invisible visible? Saving money is the exact same thing. If you don't see your progress, your brain assumes there is no progress. And if there's no progress, why bother? This is why those savings trackers that people print out and color in are actually kind of genius, even though they look like something you'd give a kindergartner. Because they turn an abstract number into a visual representation of progress. You can see yourself getting closer to the goal. You can see that you're not starting from zero anymore. You're at $300. Or $800. Or $1,500. And every time you color in another section, you get a little hit of dopamine because your brain loves progress. It's wired to respond to it. But if your progress is just a number slowly increasing in a banking app that you check once a month, it doesn't trigger that same response. It stays abstract. It stays invisible. So make it visible. I don't care if it's a physical chart on your fridge, a spreadsheet you update weekly, or an app that sends you annoying notifications every time you save money. Just make sure you can see what's happening. Because your brain needs that feedback loop. It needs to know that the effort is translating into results. Otherwise, it's going to give up. It's going to say, "This isn't working." Even if it absolutely is working, you just can't see it. So how do you break this cycle? How do you go from, "I'm bad with money," to, "I'm someone who can save $5,000. The first step is honestly kind of annoying because it requires you to do something that feels pointless at first. You have to prove to yourself that you can save something. Anything. Even if it's absurdly small. Even if it's $5 a week. Because right now, your brain doesn't believe you're capable of consistent saving. It has no evidence. It's running on this outdated operating system that says, "We don't do that here." You need to create new evidence. I'm serious about the small amounts, by the way. This isn't some motivational speaker telling you to just believe in yourself. Or whatever. This is basic behavioral psychology. Your brain changes based on repeated actions. If you can save $5 a week for 2 months, you've created a pattern. You've done something 8 times in a row. That's not luck. That's not a fluke. That's a behavior. And once your brain recognizes it as a behavior, it starts to incorporate it into your identity. You become someone who saves money. Not someone who tries to save money. Someone who does. And here's the beautiful part. Once you've established that pattern, scaling up is weirdly easy. Because the hard part isn't the amount. The hard part is the consistency. The hard part is overriding your default programming. But once you've done that with $5, doing it with $20 doesn't feel much different. And once you've done it with 20, doing it with 50 starts to feel possible. It's like building a muscle. The first few workouts are brutal because your body isn't used to it. But after a few weeks, it adapts. It gets stronger. Saving money works the same way. So what does all of this add up to? Why does $5,000 feel impossible? Because your brain is working against you. Because you've internalized a story about yourself that isn't true. Because you're thinking in lump sums instead of daily actions. Because you can't see your progress. Because you've been taught to feel guilty about money instead of empowered by it. Because nobody ever sat you down and explained that saving money is a skill you can learn, not a personality trait you either have or don't. But here's the good news, all of that is fixable. Every single piece of it. You can rewrite the story. You can break the goal into smaller pieces. You can make your progress visible. You can stop spiraling when things go wrong. You can track your spending, redirect the leaks, and start proving to yourself that actually, you can do this. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's just a series of small, consistent actions that add up over time. And once you do it once you hit that $5,000 mark and realize it wasn't impossible after all, you'll never look at money the same way again. Because it was never really about the $5,000. It was about believing you're capable of more than you thought. And you are. I promise you are. You just have to start. Not tomorrow. Not next month when things are less chaotic. Today. Right now. Even if it's $5. Even if it's uncomfortable. Even if you're not sure it'll work. Start anyway. Because the only way to make $5,000 feel possible is to prove to yourself, one small decision at a time, that it already is. Let me tell you about something called the latte factor, which you've probably heard of and probably think is dumb. And honestly, it's kind of dumb. The idea is that if you stop buying a $5 latte every day, you'll save like $1,500 a year and suddenly be rich. Which, sure, mathematically that's true. But in reality, nobody becomes financially secure because they stop drinking coffee. That's not how life works. The latte factor misses the point entirely because it focuses on deprivation, on cutting out something you enjoy, instead of addressing the actual problem, which is that most people have no idea where their money is going. Like, genuinely no idea. If I asked you right now how much you spent last month on food, or entertainment, or random impulse purchases online, could you tell me? Probably not. And that's not a moral failing. That's just normal. Most people don't track their spending. They just spend until the money's gone, and then feel vaguely guilty about it. But here's the thing, you can't fix a problem you can't see. If you don't know where the money is going, you can't make intentional decisions about it. You're just reacting. And reactive spending is expensive. So instead of cutting out lattes or whatever, just track your spending for a month. That's it. Don't change anything. Don't judge yourself. Just write it down. Because I promise you, you're going to find money you didn't even know you were spending. Subscriptions you forgot about. Purchases that seemed small in the moment but add up to hundreds of dollars. Patterns you weren't aware of. And once you see it, you can do something about it. You can make conscious choices. You can decide that the coffee is worth it, but maybe the subscription to a streaming service you haven't used in 6 months isn't. And suddenly you've found $50 a month without feeling deprived. That's $600 a year. That's 12% of your $5,000.